The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
On TECHxploration, your trusted tour guides, Craig and David, will explore every corner of Florida for the latest tech and innovations emerging within our communities as an inside look ahead at Florida's future.
Hey, this is our very first episode of TECHxploration on the Florida Podcast Network. Here we're going to be discovering all things tech and innovation that thrives under the Florida sun. I'm one of your hosts, Craig.
And I'm David, and we're from Clarity Creative Group, an Orlando-based digital marketing agency. Excited to share with you our first episode. Let's go.
On today's episode, we're going to kick things off with some tech news,
followed by Clinton Muntean joining us from Mainline Marketing as we discuss AV trends during the pandemic, best microphones for your conference room, really cool tech there, and noise canceling technology.
Finally, we'll end the episode with our tech tip. And our very first tech news topic, something near and dear to my heart, Coinbase is launching an NFT platform. Now, I'll start it off with, for those of you that aren't familiar with Coinbase, that is kind of the number one biggest, I think, cryptocurrency maybe market. Whereas you could go on the app, you can go on the website, and you could buy, sell, trade cryptocurrency, right? And that's been where Coinbase has made their name over the last couple of years. They actually went public last year. They're all through the SEC and insured. And like, again, they're legitimate at this point. Where things get crazy is they announced at the end of third quarter in 2021 that they were going to launch an NFT platform. Now, they weren't sure when they were going to open it up, right? Many people thought it was going to be by the end of 2021. That didn't happen. People thought it was going to be January 2022. That didn't happen. February 2022. That didn't happen. So what they've been doing is constantly rolling out a little teasers about launch partners, different projects they're going to be featuring. And then the big drop was when they announced a MasterCard, that's right, the credit card company collaboration, so that people will eventually be able to buy NFTs with, again, a regular credit card through the protection of Coinbase. Now, what's really interesting for us here at TECHxploration, David and I are business partners, personal friends, and we've been on two different sides of, I think, the NFT spectrum, where I got really deep into it, really intrigued. And on the collectible side, where David got intrigued by the developer side of it. So, David, do you have any insight into your thoughts here on how Coinbase, again, straight up is going to be competing with what's now the market leader, which is Opensea? There's platforms like LooksRare, Shopify's in that space. We're very familiar with Shopify. What are your thoughts on Coinbase coming in and having an NFT platform?
It's exciting. There's millions and millions of users right already in the Coinbase platform. So it's now not even a new place for that people would need to probably sign up. I would guess it would, kind of fall under that same umbrella. MasterCard obviously brings a lot of big name technology, credit card processing in there. So obviously there's some trust levels there. I mean, I think it brings some NFT stuff a little bit more to the masses, maybe. I know that there's some platform stuff and some things that are can be chunky about some of that process, even as a developer, seeing, in the buying process. So I think it's a term you've used before, Craig, frictionless experience.
Absolutely. And isn't that what anything in tech needs? Frictionless, right? If you go back far enough in web tech, websites used to be harder to use than they are now. This is that UI, UX, user experience thing that these are topics you'll hear us talk about in the future, on future episodes too. And like, making things easy for people to use is key. If you go back far enough, Amazon was scary. People didn't want to buy on Amazon. They didn't know, should I put my credit card online? Should I do that? Well, we got through that. We got through that as a culture. We got through that as a people. And now we transact regularly on websites. Crypto is a scary place for a lot of people. And Coinbase comes in trying to make that easier, right? Trying to make it kind of more approachable. And the way they do that is through having custodial wallets. And what that means is that they're holding the assets for you. Very similar to how many stock companies work. Like if you're ever messing with Fidelity or Vanguard or any of that stuff, they're typically holding that stock on your behalf in an account that's named and kind of put to you in your social security number, rather than you having to worry about managing it on your own and literally going to the New York Stock Exchange and trying to like trade paper with people. Coinbase is doing that for crypto, and soon we'll be doing it for NFTs, which is potentially game changing. And I say potentially because a lot is unknown here. You may have heard NFTs on the news as this crazy thing. It's because it's so early and new. And David, having that developer perspective, he kind of brought it up just a second ago. So much of this hasn't even been like created yet. I'm not kidding. Like there's stuff that isn't out there yet, like 15 to 20 years ago in web, where there weren't ways to transact as easily. They didn't have the same ease of use of like being able to put a plugin on a website and now you can buy things. It was just, everything was much more difficult. So I'm really excited that Coinbase will soon, don't know when, whether it's going to be the end of quarter 1, 22 here into quarter 2, not sure when, but they are really ramping up to launch this thing. Their wait list got to over 3 million email addresses. That doesn't mean it's that many people. People could be putting multiple emails, but that's a lot of people that are interested in this. So very exciting stuff coming up for Coinbase, NFTs, and tech as a whole.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are very excited for an episode with owner of Mainline Marketing, AV guru, car enthusiast, Clinton Muntean. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, but that was very enthusiastic.
Yeah, I'm hyped.
You're building it up. I think people might be disappointed.
I don't think so. And we are recording at maybe the highest level known to mankind. We're at the Mainline Marketing Experience Center on Shore SM7Bs. Clinton's going to tell you a little bit more about that. David's here with me.
This is easily the fanciest recording I've ever done in my life.
Yes, we recorded other episodes from our office, which is a hovel,
We were in a radio studio before, and it didn't feel as comfy as this. So.
Oh, I forgot about that. We did kind of record over at iHeart too at a time or two. So you've done well here. And to that point, we're going to be talking about throughout this episode audio visual tech. You're right. You own, operate an AV marketing company. So maybe to start, you want to give us a sense of what the heck that even means to a regular person. And then we are recording in the Experience Center. So I'm going to poke you about different things I'm looking and seeing that our listeners will only have to hear us about.
So what Mainline really is a manufacturer's representative firm. And our job, so we're hired or retained by the manufacturers that make the equipment. So we act as their sales and marketing departments. And there's a number of firms like mine around the country. We all have territories. So our territory is Florida and Puerto Rico for a majority of my lines. And our job is to influence the market, which includes resellers and larger end users, to purchase the brands that these manufacturers produce. So, as an example, we might, so we work with resellers vary. So it can be anything from an integrator that does installs, and those installs can be anything from a church to a theater to a hospital to, conference rooms, to a guitar center, that sell, microphones and pro audio equipment. So our job is to influence the owners and salespeople and designers and, anybody making product decisions to use our brands. And then those brands compensate us for those efforts. And then in the case of the end user, with larger end users for larger projects or larger opportunities, we work directly with them. They still buy through one of those resellers, but we just work with them and assist and help find solutions, right? So, that kind of leads into the Experience Center, actually. So the reason we built it is so those resellers could bring customers to see solutions working in the real world. Or we could even do proof of concept stuff here. They want something very specific. We can build it, and then they can come and see it and feel it, hear it.
Well, and that's how we're recording right now. We're recording with some of the equipment that you represent in the Experience Center, but the recording aspect is only one part of what's going on in the Experience Center. There's video applications, and there's maybe even where kind of this is interesting for a wider base. Like if you have a podcast, yes, microphones are going to matter for you of this level. But in an office setting, for example, where microphones actually could matter these days, or the screens, how are you seeing, again, what you put together in the Experience Center? How did you bring like an office application or maybe a school application to life here, where you were able to show people stuff that wasn't just, hey, here's a microphone, it works better than yours?
Well, I think it's because it's, like you said, I think it's the word solution, right? So a microphone is just one part of the signal chain. So you've got to be able to turn that microphone on, control that microphone. You need speakers. If it's a video conference, you need cameras. Or in the school application, everybody's doing distance learning now. So, in distance learning or lecture capture, they're using a number of different products to make that happen, right? So in the case here, we've got a very large screen, we've got PTZ cameras, microphones, and they all are then going into what I'll call a hub, but in this case like a DSP, which is then connected to whatever platform they're using, whether it's Zoom or Teams or some other hard codec. And then we have a control system to be able to turn all these things on and off, or change the position of the PTZ camera. So whether it's a distance learning application, video conferencing, training room, we have so much stuff here that we can kind of almost emulate anything.
From the sound of it, I mean, you said Zoom, which triggers a memory for me where David actually, and our aspect of it, people know this from our little teaser trailer. We run a digital marketing agency. He had us on Zoom before it was cool, right? So this was years ago. We were sending Zoom requests to people and we were not getting responses. They would not show up to the Zoom. But I think we now know, because of everything that went down over the last 18 months, people are more likely. Are you seeing on your end, whether it's those bigger businesses or a classroom environment or whatever, are you seeing potential customers or clients asking those questions where they weren't 5-6 years ago? Do they need more video audio solutions? What are you seeing right now even?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been doing it a very long time. I mean, back when it was all hardware and there were no soft codecs, Teams and Zoom and didn't exist, and it was all done over T1 lines and with hardware, and it was very expensive. So probably we've been doing that for 15 years.
Wow.
But, fast forward, and not even just the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, Skype and which became Link, which became Teams. So all these platforms are out there, and the corporate world, enterprise companies were utilizing these to communicate as an alternative to that very expensive hardware solution I mentioned earlier, and getting away from these T1 lines and going over the internet. So that's been a trend, but of course the pandemic changed it in a bunch of ways. One, a lot of those people that were in those big conference rooms, like the one we have here, those conference rooms are empty.
Right.
Right.
They're all at home.
They're all at home. So now they need to get equipment, maybe not as complex as what they might have in their conference room, but they still need to step up their game. So that was happening during the pandemic. There was a surge in people wanting work from home solutions. But now what we're seeing is more of a hybrid model. So a lot of people are back in the office. Those conference rooms are being utilized. Some of the conference rooms have been reconfigured because they want to take those bigger conference rooms and just put less people, or they're using open spaces or reconfigurable spaces. So our business has picked up in that way just because there's lots of change. But now the meetings are hybrid. So now it's even more important for people to be able to communicate on Teams and Zoom and Google Meetup. So there's also an increase in particular with smaller companies that might not have used it before. Law firms are a great example. Traditionally, law firms, all their business was done in the office. Oh, yeah. And it was almost unheard of. My neighbor's a mediator, and it was unheard of for him to do a mediation remotely. Like, they wouldn't even ever considered it. It was unheard of for a judge to do an arraignment remotely, unless the guy was in jail. They've been doing that for a while. We've been doing that, helping them with that technology because of the cost and risk of transporting prisoners from the jail to the courthouse. So they had that set up at these secure lines. But now it could just be a simple case, and the courthouses are shut down, and they're doing them all remotely. So there's a ton of that going on, and And in many cases, in particular with smaller and medium, well, even enterprise companies, they're using what we call soft codecs, which are your Teams and Zoom and things like that. So all you need is a PC and a microphone and speaker, and you can communicate with anybody.
Do you find that even in that simplification of it, where, hey, we don't need the T1, we're not needing those full installs like we did, do you feel like there are still some AV solutions that can change the game? I'll speak from, again, just as an example, I've been on many a Zoom or Teams that it's not even an internet issue, but the person on the other end sounds bad. They sound like a robot. They sound, the camera you brought up. Where do you see this hybrid work model going in relationship to any of these peripherals that might improve that software?
Somebody sounding bad means they have the wrong product, maybe in the wrong space. I mean, there could be other things that are causing that. For instance, acoustics or background noise.
Sure.
So
babies and dogs and things going crazy in the house.
Those kind of things.
Echoing, in a home that wasn't built for.
But all those things aside, it starts with the right product in the right space. So, these mics are great mics, and they're designed for being, within 6 inches of your mouth. Right.
We're up on it.
So they're a dynamic, they're a dynamic microphone. And if we were to put this in the middle of the conference table and all stand around it, or sit around it, I should say, it wouldn't sound so great on the far end, right? The people on the far end would be like, hey, you guys sound very far away, having a hard time hearing you. It's picking up a lot of room noise. Whereas in a larger space, those microphones up there in the experience area, which of course nobody can see, but it's the MXA 910 from Shure. It has about 100 little microphones in it, and it has 8 lobes, and they're smart, and they can pick up where people are, and you can basically aim the lobes to where the seats are in the room, and then
it can be designed before the thing is even turned on. Again, I can look at this thing, and I know there's no video, but it's a pretty attractive, slimline, flat panel. There's 100 microphones in it, and you're saying walk us through how someone would. Again, we have a conference room. This could be relevant for us. How would we put it in and do that?
So the way it works is, it does need programming, right? So, and it uses a protocol we were talking about a little earlier before the podcast called Dante, which is a digital audio over IP protocol. That's licensed by Audinate. So in the pro audio and commercial audio world, that's pretty much a standard. Most digital audio products, you can, if it doesn't come with a Dante option, you can get a Dante option. So that microphone is PoE powered. So it has just one RJ45 going to it. And that's providing power. And it's also sending audio. Those 100 microphones, it has 8 lobes. They create 8 lobes. You don't have to use them all. You aim them in the room where you need them. You can make them kind of wide or narrow and aim them where you need them. And then it also has a feature called autofocus. So when somebody's talking, it will actually adjust.
Is that smart element of
yes.
it? So it's going to...
it's got some AI kind of built in. And and it'll adjust itself based on where that person is.
See, this is, again, interesting to a level of it feels like the future. So it sounds like you're saying the microphone, if I'm on one side of the table, is going to know that. And if someone else on the other side of the table, in a big conference room where it might be 15 feet away, microphones at this level, I know not all microphones, but microphones at this level have this technology. Was it like that 15 years ago? Was it like that 12 years ago? When did this happen?
Sort of, but it was done differently.
Okay.
So what's being done now is you've got this one, even though it's 100 little elements, but this one microphone, 8 lobes, and think of it like in the audio world we call it a gate, but like doors opening and closing. So if there's nobody talking in that space where lobe number 1 is, well, lobe number 1's not going to send any signal down that RJ45, which is then going to a processor or something, right? And then eventually out to the far end through Zoom or Meet, Teams or whatever. So there's these 8 lobes. They're not all on at the same time. If they were, you would get a lot of room noise, right? Because it's picking up whatever's in the room. So, and like I said, there's some other things in there. There's noise suppression. There's a companion processor called IntelliMix, and it actually has a denoiser feature. So if you are, clickety clack with a keyboard, or opening a bag of chips while on a conference call, which is
I do that regularly.
really bad etiquette.
What kind of conference call is it if chips are not involved?
Yeah, exactly. So
Mainly because of the chewing, right? The chewing is
oh yeah, that's the worst part. So, but those noises, the denoiser will filter out because of that smartness, that AI. It knows what the human voice is supposed to sound like, and it knows that a chip bag is not a human voice. So now the way we used to do that 15 years ago is we had individual microphones in the room. Maybe they were gooseneck mics. You've seen them like podium, on the lectern,
long and thin.
long thin mic on the tables, or you had them hanging from the ceiling on wires.
Yep, I've seen that.
Like a choir mic, right? And it's the same little mic element. And what we would do then is all those mics would be wired to what's called an auto mixer, and they've been around a very long time actually. And this auto mixer will sort of open and close those doors. When it detects voice, it would allow that signal to pass. And if it didn't detect voice, I say voice, I just call it sound.
Sure.
Right. So if you clap in front of it, it will open up.
Right. Back then it wasn't
It didn't have the knowledge.
Yeah, it didn't have the AI function, right? But you could set a threshold. So if there was a tiny bit of background noise, like 5 feet away, the mic won't open up. But as soon as you talk into it, that level, that SPL level would then open up what we call a gate and allow that signal to pass. So you could have 8 microphones or 12 microphones or 20 microphones in a room and use an auto mixer, and then you would send that, back then was a hard codec, over that T1 line. So it's kind of circling way back, the right thing for the right space, right? So if you've got cameras, displays, the same thing. If you have a 55-inch display in a room that's 30 feet long and you're trying to show people spreadsheets, it's not going to work, right? And there's an there's an ANSI standard for that.
Me in the back saying, I guess I should sleep because I cannot see that spreadsheet.
Yeah, so there's an ANSI standard for that, like, how many feet you are away and 12-point font, and there's a formula to know how big of a screen you should put in a room, depending on the distance of the furthest person away, right? So it's just the right thing for the right room, and when you don't know, you call us.
Well, and obviously in a podcast you can't see it, but the difference of the technology from what we had back then, right, the 10 years ago, is things hanging from the ceiling. This is literally just like a square. It looks almost like, I don't know, I'd call it almost looks like an AC duct. If you
or
didn't
a ceiling
know.
tile, maybe.
A ceiling tile, yeah.
Oh, you can imagine how they would install
it could be
that.
flush in. You might not even know it exists. It's not even anything that is even seen, which means you can move everything around on the desk, which probably means you could get rid of the desk if you want. You don't have anything hanging there. It's just also the technology itself has just evolved so much that doesn't even, it could be a ceiling tile that pretty much can listen to you. And you ended it where you were saying the right, technology for the right purpose. How does how's a small business owner, how does somebody kind of get through that? Because like the laptop mic, it's good from like 3 feet away. Yeah. How is it that a consumer maybe even would kind of know? Is that just something that it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of information? Is there certain things that they should look forward to? Because there's a lot out there, and like if I bought this mic and thought I could place it on my conference table because it's a really good expensive mic and that everybody in the room would hear me, it's like you said, it's wrong. Even though it's expensive, it's not, or it's a good quality mic, it's just used for the wrong purpose.
I mean, we all use the Google now, but
love the Google.
I think if you're a small business, if you're a consumer or an individual that wants something for your home, that's easy, right? You can Google that, and there's so many solutions. These mics are incredible, but they're also this depending on your budget, right? So there's
absolutely.
So these ones are a little on the pricier side, but Shure, who make this mic, make mics all the way from $99, and then of course the sky's the limit because they make so many different things for different applications. But as far as like your small business, if you're a restaurant that needs a sound system, for instance, versus a lawyer that might want a video conference room. So, where do you start? Where do you get that information? I think the first thing to do is just call somebody who knows. You can have a consultant, and again, depending on your budgets, you can have a consultant, an AV consultant, design the project. and they will sort of be non-partial, right? Like they're just going to try to find the best. You can hire an integrator to do the same thing, and then of course the integrator can also install it, sell it to you, and install it. And most integrators we're all supposed to be impartial, but of course they have brands that they like, they have brands that they're familiar with. And in fact, that's my job. My job is to convince them to use my brands.
Right.
So, so they're going to have loyalties or some, but they're going to put you in the right thing, right?
Right. They have the best interest.
Yeah. An integrator with integrity is just going to, and which most of them do. We work with all of them here in Florida. They're going to create a system for you that's going to work. And then the other thing you can do is contact like a firm like ours. We'll give you the guidance, usually at no cost, because we want you to use our products.
Right. That's not how you make your money on that
Yeah.
side.
And then when they're ready to buy the product, then we help them find the right integrator that's the right fit for them. But now outside of that, just Googling it might be tough. What kind of mic for a conference room? Well, again, it depends on the conference room,
Absolutely.
right? So there's our trade organization on the commercial side is called Avixa, AVIXA. And they have lots of training resources, lots and lots of training resources. And that's where a lot of the standards are created and or at very least published, where you'll be able to find standards. And that thing I was talking about with the display, how big the display needs to be, that would be somewhere on their website, right? In their resources.
So that the person wouldn't buy a too small situation.
Or too big.
Or too big, right?
Yeah, and overpay. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then there's another trade organization on the commercial side called NSCA. Now, if you just type in NSCA, it comes up with something else, like bodybuilding or something. I forget what it is, but it might not be. But it's something, because there's two organizations with the same acronyms. Yeah. So you just have to like type in the word audio or something. Right after it, because the other one comes up first. But NSCA is an incredible resource for stuff like that. If you want to geek out and read about it.
I missed an SEO plug on that hard. I missed an SEO digital marketing plug.
I think they might need us.
They should have called.
We could probably help them out with that.
They're just behind the muscle.
Because they're not the National Strength and Conditioning Association.
I was right. It was bodybuilding, not bodybuilding.
That feels good, right?
There's a big difference.
You're motivated, obviously, to connect people with these brands that you represent. But you've cultivated the brands you represent over these years.
Some of them.
You choose to work with certain ones because of certain things.
Some of them choose to work with us. I don't want to sound
fair,
especially if any of them listen to this.
But where I was going with that, true. There's a mutual collaboration.
Yes, yeah.
But would you say from your origins, which was 20 plus years ago, to now, that is there any connection? And it's okay if there's not. I'm straight up asking a question I do not know the answer to. Are you looking to see that the brands you represent, or even if you're considering a new brand, are they on the forefront of what is in available technology in their space? Do you not worry about that? Is that one of the motivating factors?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So if a brand comes to us, just because we've been doing it so long, we have a good reputation, so it does happen frequently. And most of the time, just because of our bandwidth, we turn them down. But if it is something we're considering, it's a number of things. One, does it conflict with something we already have? Right.
Sure.
So then it's an absolute, definitely not. But are they innovating, or are they copying? Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or a Me Too, kind of, they just make what other people make, or it's all coming out of one factory with just different brand names on it.
Gotcha.
Not to say that we wouldn't do it, but that's certainly something we consider. And do we have to pioneer it? Is a brand people already know? But if it's a brand that no one knows and it's saturated, that's really hard work.
What if it's a brand that nobody knows, but the product you deem it innovative, or whatever that means to you?
Then that's great, because then we get excited about taking that to our customers and saying, I know you've never heard of this, but look at what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And is it about what it does at that point? Is it because, again, the name wouldn't matter. Nobody maybe knows that company yet, but you may have found that the application of what it can do. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, we don't typically run into new applications, right? The applications are the applications. Those applications change slowly over long periods of time, but unless a pandemic happens and all of a sudden things
change rapidly.
But typically, it's not so much that. It might just be that they're solving a problem a different way, or came up with a new way of, doing something we already do, Maybe they found a new way to build something that's half the price of the way we used to do it. That auto mixer, for instance. So that auto mixer, 10 microphones in a room, 2 auto mixers, a hard codec, believe it or not, that stuff, well, maybe it's easy to believe that was really expensive.
I believe that. It sounded like a lot of things.
And so even though that microphone up there is not cheap, you can do what that stuff did for less than half the price.
For less than half the price with one unit instead of having not. You named 13 pieces that would have to be in the room to do what a one single microphone could do now.
So that microphone I just mentioned, we have another one that Shure, it's called the stem ceiling. Very similar, just in application, not the way they work, but similar in application. But they're both ceiling microphones. But the stem one in a smaller room, all you need is a computer. You just plug it directly into your computer.
Plug. Yeah, we're talking like a USB dummy plug. Like me could figure that out.
Yep, and you can, and they make a wall version, and they make a table version. So now you've got a bunch of people in the conference room. You got 5 or 10 people around a table. Plug it, bring your own device, plug it in, start your meeting, and now it bypasses the audio on your computer, the mic and the speaker.
Right.
And you're going through this device, which will raise your game. And it's doing the same thing that auto mixer used to do, right? But all because it's got a bunch of microphones in this device and a speaker in this device, and it's doing everything that thing did and more. I mean, now we're talking about, okay, you can do that for a couple grand versus that other system to have it put in, installed, and all the equipment would have cost you $20,000 or $30,000.
Sure.
Right? So things like that happen, and it's not like that happened overnight. It was a journey. And different products along the way. So when we see innovators like STEM that product line, they have this thing called audio fencing, which is kind of a new technology where imagine like you have this conference table and you build like a little force field around it.
Oh, I like where this
anything
is going.
Within the bubble you can hear. Anything with outside the bubble is dramatically reduced.
That STEM table you were talking about has that?
The STEM ceiling does.
Can I get that installed at my home office so you don't have to hear my child's singing Bluey?
Exactly.
That'd be great.
That wasn't around 15 years ago. Because the reason I asked that is 15 years ago, there was still a way to get a conference room mic'd. It was expensive. It had a lot of pieces. Yeah. That's now in one piece.
Yeah.
This thing, though, audio fencing, wasn't around is what you're saying.
No, the only way you could accomplish that is the way I mentioned earlier with gates, and setting thresholds. So if that person making the noise 15 feet away from the conference table, if the noise were loud enough, it would open up the gate on that auto mixer and you would hear it. But now what's happening is it's not that simple anymore. Now it's all like AI, and these products can detect, okay, that noise is not speech. Now, even if it is speech, this audio fencing takes it to a whole other level. I don't know. It's like, okay, that is speech. It's a kid singing, but
I don't want it.
It's far enough. It's out of my zone. I'm detecting it past
and
that.
It knows. You're saying that.
Yeah, so it'll try to suppress it.
In and outside noises. Wow.
And if you think about that, a transducer isn't smart, right? This transducer, this little diaphragm inside the microphone, is picking that up. At the same time, it's picking up my voice. It's picking up this noise behind me. So there's processors in there that are doing a lot of math, to be able to, because what they have to do is, you can't get rid of it. It's there. Like technically, like it's been picked up.
They have to take it out.
They have to take it out.
Wow.
So what they have to do is they have to sort of recreate it out of phase and cancel it out.
What is crazy tech to you? And I'll give an example for me. Like, I'm an iPhone user, have been for a long time. That doesn't like necessarily blow me away. But something that did blow me away that might not blow you away was the noise canceling feature on my new headphones. That canceled some noise, but I could still hear my business partner. I'm listening to my music. This was the environment mode, I believe is what it was called on the Aonics. I might have got that right. And that did blow my mind because he's talking from his office. I'm in my office. I'm still hearing Adele, and I hear him.
And I'm not even directly pointed at him.
He's not directly pointed at me.
Like a wall.
Maybe there's a microphone in it or something. I don't know.
There is,
but that blew my mind a little bit. So is there something that could blow your mind at this point?
Yeah. I mean, noise canceling headphones, by the way, just for the listeners here. They do not drown out your spouse, right? So,
Right.
So what they're designed to do originally, when noise canceling headphones kind of first became popular, it's when you're on an airplane, you hear that,
Oh yeah.
right? For 8 hours if you're going somewhere far, Europe. Even if you sleep, when you get off a plane, you're just like worn out. It's just this white noise that's constantly got your brain working hard, right? So what noise canceling headphones do is much like much like audio fencing or denoising, it takes that constant sound. And when it's a constant sound, it's actually easier than what some of these other technologies are doing. But it's able to basically flip it out of phase. So if you're on an airplane and turn your music off and then turn noise canceling on, so you leave it off and then turn it on, and you'll hear that go away.
Right.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
So that blew me away years ago when I first heard it, but I still use it.
Of course.
Actually, that's not true. I actually use in-ears. So there's
those
noise
have,
cancellation.
Those have noise canceling too, don't they?
No, it's called noise isolation because it's like sticking earplugs in your ears. So it's just basic, stuff your ears with a lot of tissue paper or big rubber plugs, right? So what you're doing is if you have good fitting in-ear monitors, either because you had them custom made or you've got good squishies that are brand new and you squish them and then you put them in your ears correctly. And then when they expand, it blocks out all the noise. Now, the downside to that is you cannot hear people talking to you.
No, you cannot. You're plugged up.
So if you have your noise canceling headphones on and you have the environmental mode on to where you can still hear people around you, then when the flight attendant asks you, do you want that extra vodka soda?
Which we do. We
Yes.
do typically say yes to that.
So what blows me away is I helped a customer. It was a university, and they had a classroom that they wanted to make high tech. They wanted it to be that no one ever had to touch anything to make it work. And the reason being, if you're an English teacher, for instance, you might be an incredible English teacher, but you may not know anything about tech.
Makes
So you're
sense.
walking into this room with you're looking around here at all this fancy equipment we have. And even sometimes you create this great UI on a control panel that makes it, we think, is super easy.
Yeah, just touch these 9
Just
buttons
touch this.
in sequence.
Yeah. Well, it's usually easier than that, but
Audio
still.
on, audio off.
Or maybe there is a sequence. You have to do this and that. For instance, you could have to turn the system on, right? So it's on. The projector comes on, or the screen, or whatever's in the room. The screen comes down. You have to press an on button. Well, now everybody needs to hear you, so you have to wear a mic. Okay, well, you have to get a belt pack. Does it have new batteries? What happens if the batteries get low and it starts to drop out? So
Steps.
just stuff. It was also a distance learning classroom.
So you had people,
You had to make sure you stood in front of the camera.
of course. Nobody can see you.
But what happens if you want to walk? Or what happens if you forget? You just get caught up in the moment of your teaching and you walk out of the view of the camera.
Straight up disappear. Your students
Yeah.
just leave.
So you don't know how to put a mic on your lapel. A mic on your lapel should stick straight up towards your
I've
mouth.
struggled with that for many.
Yeah.
And
Well, I've heard it where they're walking around, they're moving, it's just
Yeah.
rustling noises
Yep.
all over the place.
Exactly. Because it's just not, it's
they don't
not
know how to
clipped
install
right.
it
Yeah.
properly.
So to eliminate all these problems, what they wanted to do was have microphones like that in the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And then those lobes were going to sort of cross. They had 2 in the classroom, and they were going to cross so that no matter where the instructor was, they could be heard.
Sure.
So then they said, okay, well, we also need a camera that can do tracking. That's, I don't want to say common, but it's more common than what I'm about to mention.
Fair.
So easy, right? So now the instructor
Can move.
can
freely.
move around and the camera will track where the instructor is.
Okay.
But what happens if somebody else gets up there? So like somebody else stands up there. Now what's the camera going to do? It's going to freak out. Like, okay, do I track this person? That person?
Definitely gonna follow the person going to the bathroom.
Yes. And they still didn't want them to have to turn on a button or
Nothing.
anything,
Just
right? So
touch nothing.
and they had a software system that would recognize you walk into the room and you're not the instructor that's supposed to be scheduled. The system doesn't do anything.
Stop it.
The janitor walks in the room. The system does nothing. You walk into the room. You're scheduled to teach a lecture, recognizes your face, boom. Everything does what it's supposed to do. Turns on.
It turns on
It
because it saw his face.
And it starts streaming at the appropriate time, right? Because it's supposed to stream. It opens up their Zoom platform or whatever they were using.
That's the 2050 stuff right there.
This is like,
and
I've seen movies with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because it's facial recognition, if somebody else were to get up, the camera's not going to track them. It's only going to track the person it's supposed to. So now, their software system has to be kept updated. So if it turns out a substitute's coming in, they've got to put those credentials in.
Put a face in.
Yeah, their face. Yep.
You're saying this is happening. You saw this in real time work.
Yes, they're still working on it.
That's
it.
sick.
But they can do it. They can do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this is like
That is sick
an
because
idea.
we're old now and college was ago, but I can't imagine that the professor walks in, the stuff goes on. It wasn't even on. A little power savings there, right?
Yeah.
Rather than it being left on from the day before, and then can instantly do the stream for the hybrid learning. Because really, hybrid learning isn't going anywhere. I don't think. I think colleges are going to start to realize we can make more money even having people from other places pay for these courses. So that's going to happen at some point, I think.
Yeah.
Wow. So that one blew your mind a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, because it's super complex. But when you look at each individual thing, maybe it's less impressive, right? You look at the microphone.
But it's working together.
but you put it together and that and like that's just like perfect, synchronizing of equipment in a almost foolproof, solution for a teacher whose job it is. And I'm sure that they would probably say, my job is to teach. My job is not
even the more the administration's going to love that too, because you got accountability city on like, are my instructors getting there on time? Like it has all these other data points that are unintended for the application of the video and audio.
That's something we're doing too, actually. We're doing, so because these products are kind of relatively smart now, and they're connected to, like our audio products, for instance, are connected to DSPs. Those DSPs can they're all on everything's on the network now. Everything. In fact, all the audio and video is on the network.
Gotcha.
So that example, by the way, everything was on the network. It's all PoE speakers, PoE microphones, PoE everything, right? So so they're all endpoints, right? So something to mention, by the way, 20 years ago when we used to meet with people, they were AV guys. Most of them musicians or like that ended up in the AV world, right? Not anymore.
Quarter-inch XLR people.
Yeah, so those people have now either evolved, they've either retired or evolved and learned more about IT, because nowadays, if you're talking about a large church or a large enterprise, it's all run by the IT department because everything has a MAC address and an IP address. Like, so,
Analog
and you cannot put anything
past.
on a network without going through IT, right? So the IT guys don't really know like inverse square law and things like that relate to audio, and so we're having to teach them and
so you're an intermediary there though, as Mainline Marketing, as what you do, you're helping bridge the gap between the tech side, that IT, everything's got to be on the network, and the fact that but we also need these audio-visual solutions to serve you. So
what we can do now is let's say you've got a large enterprise company that's got 200 conference rooms and all around, maybe they're not even the same building. Well, there's technology in the past can do this, but now you can do it with your AV system. So your AV system can tell you how often that room gets used.
That's cool.
Just by listening. That's
what I meant. Like the administration's going to get data that they didn't ever have access to before to even figure out how, like for the business, it's that figured out staffing a little bit, or do we need a smaller facility? Oh, these rooms are going unused. Can we save a ton of money next year?
Exactly. Or they're being used at capacity and nobody can book a meeting.
Oh, right. We need more. Goes both ways. So
there's lots of stuff like that. Like analytics is the next thing. Room usage. Stuff like that. So now there's software. We talked about QSE briefly. So their products, they do, audio and video distribution control, but they also have this product called Reflect, which is an enterprise manager. And so you can see everything, all of their products on a network, from your house if you wanted to, right? So if you're this large enterprise and you're the IT manager, you can not only monitor, but you can log in and fix things remotely.
That's
right.
sick.
That's so helpful, though.
This is what's going to happen, though. I mean,
or the system tells you something's wrong.
Right.
The system says, "Hey, there's something wrong."
Like a check engine
wait a
light.
minute.
Yeah.
So how far away are we from that poor IT manager being out of work because the system assesses it and then fixes it?
Well, I think it still takes somebody to fix it, to actually push, to do something.
I was going
like
full
the
Terminator
action.
2
Yeah.
on that one. I was going full Judgment Day.
It won't be long because, the next big thing is AI, and it might be that a robot can do it.
Interesting. Well, I think that's a perfect time to thank you so much for being on TECHxploration. But if someone was going to call you, tell everybody how they might find you.
Well, mainlinemarketing.com. Yeah. And if they have questions about AV related tech, we can help them.
I think, again, this might be something we just have to revisit in time because tech changes at such a rapid pace. New mics come out that can do magic fencing and force fields and all this stuff. So thank you so much. This was awesome.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. At your place.
Yes.
Thanks for it. Cool.
Whenever we interview guests, we always ask them to share a tech tip.
It's basically anything that makes our guests' lives easier. Could be an app, software, website, could even be a keyboard shortcut. If it saves them time, frustration, or money, we want you to know about it.
Our very first tech tip comes from Glenn Hebert of the Horse Radio Network. Take it away, Glenn.
I've always used CRMs from the days I was in sales and taught sales, contact management systems. And we always had trouble finding one that was easy enough to use for everybody, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's
So
the big problem.
CRMs tend to be just complicated, and because they want to track funnels and all this stuff, and that's great for large corporations and people who have jobs just doing that. But if you're out there on your own selling and doing your own thing, you just want basically a Rolodex. You want some place where you can track what's going on with the customer, have all the emails go in there. So if I go in, it's just simple. I just want it to work. And I found one that I absolutely love, that it's very simple and it's easy to use, called Less Annoying CRM.
Really?
Less Annoying CRM is the nicest CRM I've ever used. I use it all the time. I have it, with multiple users over on our side. You can just put a code in so that all the emails will automatically go in there assigned to. So when I send out an email, I just click the CRM code and it goes into that person's account on Less Annoying CRM. So I can go in there and see all the emails. You can track funnels and do all of that. And that's great, except I just want it for the basic stuff. I just want a place to house all that information. And that's something that a lot of people, especially salespeople, we're not real good at the follow-up stuff. Like
you need the thing to do it, help you do it.
I'm good at the selling part, but the applications, I used to be awful at filling those out. It'd be a week. And that's the thing I actually got paid on, right? But, this tracking thing, that's not so good for us with our ADD kicks in, and most salespeople have ADD. But Less Annoying CRM is the one that kind of does it for you. And I absolutely love that thing.
Oh, you could see how a CRM makes a big difference, and Glenn's favorite is Less Annoying CRM. Amazing, because honestly, relevant for us. We're in an industry where having a CRM matters. Being able to help manage that flow of client communication is super key. And if you want to hear more from Glenn, check out episode 3 of this show, TECHxploration, which comes out on Tuesday, March 15th. We talked to Glenn about the evolution of podcasting over his 15 years in the space.
For details and show notes about today's show, go to floridapodcastnetwork.com. And we want our community of Florida enthusiasts to grow. Join in with our super fans, the FPN Insiders, on Facebook, Clubhouse, and Good Pods. Just search for FPN Insiders. And of course, find us anytime at iwantclarity.com.
Many thanks to this week's sponsor, Flint Stone Media. Be sure to visit all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Where we're seeing it, tech rules everything around here, and we can't wait for you to listen in to the next episode to learn more.
Floridians are both creating and consuming some amazing innovations from shore to shore. So join in on this ride with Craig and David exploring the innovative tech in our backyards. Find the latest episodes, show notes, and news at floridapodcastnetwork.com.